The portal today has opened, my dear listener, to a story that I have been needing to share with you and talk about with you for some time now. It is a story that has been a big aspect of my spiritual business journey, although not the whole not the whole journey. I do not want to give my power away or give too much credit to this being a part of my life because I am not going to give away more power to this circumstance than I have in the past. And so I feel like it is finally my time to be open and honest with you about what I have been through and a circumstance that is pretty crazy and is honestly quite worthy of its own TV show, if I'm going to be fully honest, because like some of this stuff I can't even freaking believe that I witnessed, that I went through, that I didn't realize at the time that there were things that were off. And I have so much grace and compassion for myself for navigating this with in the way that I did and with as much integrity as I could have. And for anyone who has been impacted by this, like I want you to know I see you, I've been there, and I'm a safe space if you need to come forward to talk about what you've been through because your life has been touched by the person in this episode that I'm going to be talking about today. I am here for you. So, I do want to share too like a quick disclaimer before we get into this episode. This podcast episode is based on my personal experiences and perspectives. It is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am not making any factual claims about specific organizations, individuals, or groups, and nothing in this episode can be taken as legal, medical, or professional advice. Anything expressed in here is of my own personal opinion and experience, and any resemblance to actual groups or individuals is indeed coincidental. Listeners should use their own judgment in applying the information shared. And with that being said, I will not be using specific names in this episode. All names and names of organizations have been changed. And I will be sharing with you some of the details of how this particular experience shaped my business practice, shaped my life, shaped my perspectives on the spiritual space fully candidly. As you know, if you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, you know that I am a spiritual business owner and leader in full divine integrity. And I have to be honest with you. I made a commitment to myself at the beginning of this year to live my life with radical honesty. And that is a that is a path that is not an easy path sometimes. But here we are, and sharing this story is part of that path. It also needs to be said, just from like a higher, I want to go into kind of the higher level energetics of this story first before we get into it, because it's really fascinating. And I know that at a soul level, I signed up for this. This is very karmic for me. This was something that I chose to go through in this lifetime. And so I have full awareness of that, full perspective on that. And this was a big part of my Saturn return. So I want to talk briefly about the Saturn return because it's such an important part of this story and such an important part of what I navigated with this. So you listening, you probably already know what a Saturn return is, but just in case if you don't, we all go through a Saturn return, regardless if you're spiritual or not. It's something that we as human beings, it's part of our maturation experience. So the planet Saturn, it oh my god, let me back up here. The planet Saturn, when it reaches its origin point in your birth chart, is when we go through our Saturn return. And Saturn moves very slowly, so it takes about 30 or so years for it to reach its original point in your birth chart, to reach its point where at the point at which when you were born, Saturn was in the sky in your chart. And so every 30 years, we go through a new Saturn return cycle. So when Saturn returns to that point in your birth chart, you go through a series of lessons, you go through a series of events in your life that feels like a big sort of push out of the nest from the universe. It is a way to push you on the right path. It is a way to push you into the realm of adulthood. It is a way to kind of redirect you if you've been going the wrong direction, or to at least put some lessons in your lap that force you into becoming the individual adult that you are here to become. And so we go through the Saturn return between the ages of 27 and 31. So if you think back to your life, and if you think back to any really difficult circumstances or hard things that you went through during the ages of 27 to 31, that is because of your Saturn return. um, yeah, so it's pretty crazy. And we actually go through it more than once. So you will go through your Saturn return again, I believe, in your late 50s, early 60s. And again, it really just kind of depends on what you need to learn at that particular time. But I do feel like a lot of this is divinely guided. I do feel like a lot of it is karmic. I do feel like a lot of it is sort of created for your soul to evolve and to change and to mature and to become the person that you're meant to be in this lifetime. So it really sets you on the right path ultimately at the end of the day. And so I was born with Saturn in Pisces. So for my people who were born between the years of 1994 and 1996, you went through your Saturn return with me during the time frame of March 2023 to May 2025. If you were born between the age range, because I'm going to say these ranges specifically for my listener, because I know a lot of you are kind of in this category where you're either just coming out of your Saturn return, just about to start it, or went through it during the pandemic. So if you were born between 1991 and 1993, you would have gone through your Saturn return from 2020 to 2023. And then if you were born between 1997 and 2000, you're about to go through it now. Not to scare you. I don't want to create fear, but I do want to say that ultimately, I'm so grateful for my Saturn return because it brought me to where I need to be in my life, and it taught me so much. So for me in particular, we can look, and for everybody, we can look in the birth chart to see specifically what area of your life your Saturn return is going to impact. So for me, it was impacting my 11th house in astrology, which rules friends, communities, groups, organizations, being around the right people. It's a big relationship house in astrology. So I can say sitting here in front of you today that I know that my Saturn return was all about finding the right people. And I had to go through a lot of lessons and a lot of hard shit with friendships and relationships, and leaving relationships and saying goodbye to friendships and saying goodbye to people that were in my life for a long time so that I can create space for the right people. And so I can find my community. And ultimately, what this situation did that I am about to talk to you about, was it forced me into creating my own community and building a business based on community and integrity and honesty and love and like true spiritual leadership, that I get to say that I know that I found my soul family and I found a lot of my soul connections that are so dear to my heart. And if you're listening and you resonate with being one of those people, I hope that you do. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I'm so grateful that I found you. But I wouldn't have gotten here if it weren't for the story that I'm about to talk about today. So I say all of that because the Saturn return has so much importance. And if you're about to go through your own, I want you to know that it will lead you and connect you exactly where you need to be, exactly where you need to go in your life. If it feels like things are unnecessarily hard and difficult, it's for a divine reason. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And I know if you went through your Saturn return, like let's say you were in the bucket of people who went through it during 2020 to 2023, I want you to think back on what was kind of coming up for you during your life at that time, and remember and realize that it's brought you to where you are now, and that you've changed so much and you've grown so much, and that is only going to set you up for success for later on in your life. And if you went through your Saturn return even before that, you, I'm sure, can see that. And there's just so much wisdom that we can gain from that experience. So, with that being said, I'm here to talk about the community that I was involved in. It was a very karmic journey for me that I obviously learned a lot from, and I'm here to dive into that in as much detail and depth as I can share here in this sort of public forum. So, and I will say too that I did learn a lot of positive things from this. I did gain friends from this. I did meet people that are still in my life from being part of this community, this organization. I did learn some things that have impacted my business in a positive way. So it wasn't all bad and it wasn't all doom and gloom. So I'm not here to paint some dark picture of, horrible, like manipulation and just like the worst of the worst. But obviously, with the details I'm about to share with you, you're going to see that you're going to be like, oh my God, Emily, I can't believe you went through that. Like, what the fuck? This is crazy. And all of this is based on my own personal opinion and based on my own life experience. I'm not here to talk trash. I'm not here to be unnecessarily negative or create fear. This is truly, honestly, a healing opportunity for me to share this and for me to share my truth on this topic. And I also do want to say, I do want to connect some dots for you that this episode is about a person named Betty. That is a code name that people in the space have been using. That is not her real name, and that is the name that others have elected to use. It is not a name that I have chosen. But I do want to say that this is about Betty, and you will know who Betty is if you know. If you're not in the know, you don't need to know. You don't need to know who or what this is about. Then this episode is going to be more of an understanding for you of Emily and Emily's story and Emily's business story, and less about how you were potentially personally impacted by this. If you do have deeper questions about this, my door is open for you, but it's not about curiosity and like fear spreading or shaming or like, oh my God, I wonder if it was this spiritual teacher that I'm working with right now. To my knowledge, this person is not operating as expansively in business as she used to be. So I am not worried that you are currently in any of this person's containers. I don't even know if she's running a business right now. I don't know. I have totally separated myself from this community, from even a lot of people that she was formerly connected to. And so I don't know at the stage of which she is operating right now. I will not look at her website. I will not look at social media. I'm already blocked on all platforms, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, so this is about Betty. Let's talk about Betty. Well, how did I find Betty in the first place? In her business, in her community. So Betty advertised herself to be an Akashic Records expert. As you know, I'm deep in the Akashic Records realm, and so I can and do give credit for where I have learned a lot of my training from the records was through this group and this organization that Betty ran. And I found Betty through a popular spiritual podcast at the end of 2020. She again was advertising herself as being this coach for spiritual leaders and business owners who could get you really massive business success. And I was really drawn to her energy from this podcast episode because I felt like there was something there for me to learn. And at the time, I had not fully pivoted my business over to focus on spirituality. I was still Emily Logan Fitness at the time, at the end of 2020, and still wasn't fully committed to what I wanted to do in the business space. And so I went to Betty for guidance to figure out what I needed to do. So I signed up to have a reading with Betty at the end of 2020, the beginning of 2021. At this stage in my own spiritual journey, I will be very honest with you that I was not in a place of really honing my psychic gifts enough to be using good discernment with who or what I allowed in my energy. But I also know that this, again, was so karmic, that this was a circumstance that I could not have avoided in this lifetime. There were deep soul past life connections with this person that I could not avoid again. So there is no way, even if I had been discerning, that I could have kind of gotten out of this. It's like I was sort of forced and pigeonholed into this experience based on my soul's plan that I have for myself. At least that's the way that I look at things. You guys know that. Um, and so I have, again, a lot of grace and compassion for myself, and knowing too that that was at a time in the business industry and the spiritual industry as well, where we were just spending shitloads of money on coaches. People in the industry, this was a big boom in the spiritual industry. We're deep in the pandemic. Everyone's looking for answers. So there are gurus and coaches who are like really on the up and up, who are, preaching these big ideas and, get rich quick schemes, and, oh, I can make you 10K in a month, and, I can help you make I can help you create a six-figure business with so much speed, and all of these false promises that were really built on a house of cards. And I really fell for that. And I say that too because I am really honest with my advertising, and I am not going to try to claim that I can create some unbelievable result for you in your business. I'm really cautious about that. I'm going to tell you my experience with that in a little bit, and how that built a world of delusion for me that I bought into for quite a few years. I also will say too that since I went through this, I have really been deep in educating myself about cult like groups. And I am going to use that word here. I'm going to talk about cults in a moment and my understanding of them. But I've been really trying to educate myself on high control groups and cult like groups by watching a lot of cult documentaries, reading a lot of interviews of people who have been involved in cults, to educate myself on this topic. Because as someone who has influence, I have a following. I know that. I know this podcast reaches a lot of people and will reach a lot of people, that as a spiritual teacher, I need to ensure that I am someone who is leading as an individual, who is here to dismantle old programs, old paradigms, old hierarchical systems from this sort of new age, quote unquote, spiritual space that puts in the spiritual space, there tends to be a hierarchy. There tends to be putting and outsourcing power onto some guru, some spiritual leader, someone outside of yourself, where there is this totem pole, again, this hierarchy. And that's really what Betty created in this group that I was part of. And I am not going to do that. I will never do that in my business. That is my commitment to you. You know that. Anytime you come into one of my communities, my places, my spaces, I tell you, you are my brother, you are my sister, we are kindred spirits, we are on the same energetic frequency wavelength. I am not above you, I am not better than you, I do not see myself as on a pedestal. You do not need to outsource your power to me. I am not in control of your life. Like, I am here to guide you and help you find the answers from within. I will absolutely give you guidance, I will absolutely give you advice, but I am not here to tell you what to do specifically, or claim that I can be someone who is going to guide you towards some path of enlightenment, right? It's not who I'm here to be. That's not what I'm here to do. So I need to make sure that with my own teaching and practices that I'm really following that path. So before I get into my story with Betty more deeply, I just want to share, as I'm throwing around the word cult here, because it is a big word, it is a big term. And I do feel that based on my experience, based on some specific things I'm going to tell you today, that I do feel like this was a high control group and organization. A cult, based on definitions I've read online, is defined as a small, tightly knit group that is outside of mainstream society or religion, that is centered around a charismatic leader that usually demands some sort of intense devotion or relationship from its members with the person in power. And that person in power tends to use different psychological techniques, using forms of persuasion, using forms of influence, using energetic techniques, hypnosis techniques, to control, recruit, and retain members, often getting in the way of the members' own sovereignty, autonomy, agency, and sometimes even their psychological well-being. I mean, I look back on my thought patterns at that time and I really see that I was under influence. I really see that I was being coached. I was being trained in such a way to build my business in such a way that would have, if I had stayed in that group, if this person was still operating in the way that they were operating at that time, would have led me down a path that would not be in integrity, that would not have been for my highest good. And I'm also not saying, too, I'm not here to say that the business that I was running during the time that I was in this group, that my business was out of integrity, because it absolutely was not. I was still fully in control of my business, fully in control of my own teachings, of my own work, my practices, my offerings. So I'm not here to say that the way that I was operating at that time was in any way negative. Absolutely not. But I'm saying that if I had continued to learn from this person, who knows, what that would have created within me. But here's the thing, like, I've struggled with authority figures for a lot of my life. I know that I always would have left, I always would have left. So I can't even consider hypotheticals and what ifs, from this situation. Ultimately, I know that I would have left, and I did leave. And that's what's important. And that's what's helped me get to where I am now. So anyway, that's, now that we know and have the definition of what cult-like groups are all about, let's talk about my experience. So I felt this deep urge to work with Betty because of her connection with the Akashic records. So my first experience with her was in a one-on-one reading at the end of 2020. And in this reading, she told me things that she could not possibly have known about me. One of the things that really hooked me and brought me in was I had the previous few months really been deep into past life regression work and had been learning how to do past life regression on myself. And one of the first lifetimes that I had seen was a lifetime where I was hung for being a witch in a square in 16th century England. And this particular lifetime, I saw it in my mind's eye so clearly. This was months before I met Betty. And I really felt such a deep level of healing from regressing myself into that past life. So I'm sitting down on this phone call with Betty, and in the first 5 minutes, she says to me, "You've got some energy in your body that's connected to this past life where you were hung for being a witch in the square in England." Literally verbatim what I had seen in that past life. And I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, no way, this is real. I knew in my body that my past life regression experiences were real, but to have someone sit and tell me that was just like, whoa, this is crazy. Okay, like, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. And she goes on to explain and give me a lot of information about my childhood and a lot of information about me and my path, my trajectory. Now, here's the thing about Betty too that is really fascinating. Often there were real things that were given, like real energetic truths, pieces of nuggets of information that would resonate as true. But there were often grandiose, delusional statements that were made that, now looking back, I believe were used as a coercive method to retain clients, to get your buy-in about yourself, around your purpose and around who you're here to be and what you're meant to do. So by the end of the reading, she was telling me that I was going to be this world famous medium. At the time, I was really focused on mediumship. So she was like, Emily, you're going to be this world famous medium. You're going to be speaking on stages all over the world. Oh, and by the way, by the end of this year, guess what? You're actually going to be a 7-figure business owner. That's what she told me. And I fucking believed it. I was like, oh my God, she sees me. She sees how successful I'm going to be. She gets it. She knows that I'm going to be amazing at this. I hadn't even fully committed to pivoting into being a spiritual business owner. But here's this woman who's like telling me these details about my life that resonate with me. And she's also giving me these like grandiose, amazing statements that of course I want to believe that. Like, absolutely I do. And the way that she speaks was very persuasive and very enticing. And I mean, this woman was excellent at sales. She could convince you of anything. And it's funny because she used to talk about in her communities, she used to talk about this thing called two truths and a lie, which is where people use this methodology of they'll give you two things that are true and one thing that's a lie, and it leads you to believe in something even if it's not fully true. And so I can see that she was actually using that tactic on me and others. Like there would be a couple of things that were true in the readings that I would have from her. And then there were other things that were definitely a lie and were definitely fabricated to get me to believe in something that she was selling or something that she wanted me to participate in. Now, here's the thing. I also don't know, was she channeling a being that was giving her false information? That's also possible. I have no idea. I don't claim to have all of the answers or know all of the answers. I can just say that this was a very weird experience and that I just found it fascinating how she would say these things to us in the group communities. And then the way that she operated in private was almost like she was using the psychological tactics that she was telling us about. She was using them on us in private coaching sessions. So the other aspect of it too, that's crazy, and I'm going to give you a whole timeline, but just to like talk about some of the wild things I experienced for a minute here. This person was also a massive conspiracy theorist, which is where you get hooked into her communities because she would lead you to believe. And there is a whole spiritual paranoia matrix. I mean, you guys know this. Like, there are so many crazy things out there on the internet about who's running the government, who's running the world, you know, the reptilians, like the infiltration of our systems. And do I believe that there is some truth? And do I know that our government is not what we believe it to be? And do I know that a lot of, do I believe that the power really isn't in our hands, especially, you know, as people in the United States? Yeah, I believe that we don't have as much control over our government as we're led to believe, for sure, for sure, for sure. And also the extreme nature that Betty would take when talking about this stuff. Like, she would tell us all of these stories about the Freemasons, about how the Freemasons are running the world, and how there are these families in Italy that are controlling like the world and people in power, and that, you know, the people in governmental positions are just puppets for shadow organizations, and that specific major events on the world stage are satanic cult rituals. I was in one of her I was in a in a group course at one time during the Olympics. I forget what year this was. I believe the Olympics happened in 2021, 2022. I don't remember, but the Summer Olympics. And Betty is telling us about how the Olympics were a satanic ritual and how we can't even believe the Olympic athletes because they've been genetically modified, and just like all of this crazy stuff. But here I am. This is happening for me. I'm in my late 20s, right? I haven't crossed my 30s yet. It's the pandemic. No one's leaving the house. Have this very charismatic woman in front of me on Zoom who's telling me these things. Like, of course, my eyes are just going to be open, like, oh my God, taking in everything she's saying and being like, whoa, like, is this true? Like, oh my God, maybe she's right. Like, maybe this is real. Maybe politics is not what we think it is. You know, maybe the world is being run by shadow governments and like all of this stuff. And again, like I'm saying before, do I believe that there is some element of world control and like weird stuff going on. Like, yeah. But at the end of the day, the specific nature of the conspiracy that was being woven in these groups that I was paying a fuck ton of money for is just insanity. Every time I would go to a call, it was like she was trying, she would talk about the Super Bowl. Like she would talk about all of these things that I had grown up with, celebrities, how, oh, I could just spin tales and tales about things that she would say. I'm not going to go too much into the details, but some of the stuff she was telling us is pretty wild. And I just felt like all of this sadness and grief around things that I loved, like the Olympics, like the Super Bowl, that being taken out of my hands. And like, I can't even enjoy these things that used to bring me so much joy as a child because they're bad for me. And they are satanic rituals and they are bringing in like negative energy siphoning, and your consciousness is being hijacked when you're tuned in to your TV, like giving your power away to these things. Oh my goodness. And all of that goes to say that you really some part of you starts believing in these things, because at the same time, you're being told these truths about yourself behind closed doors when you're in a one-on-one coaching container with her. And she's also telling you that you're going to be the most successful person in your business, in your niche. And of course you want to believe it. So of course you want to believe everything that she's saying. And again, she's very convincing. She's very charismatic. So that is just a little bit of context around this whole thing. So I'm going to get a little bit more into the timeline here, and then I'm going to go back into some of the things that I witnessed in my experience with this. So again, I found her in 2020. I had my first reading. I did sign up for a private mentorship to work with her one-on-one. Which led me down a path to wanting to, she used the Akashic records for everything. So I wanted to be able to do what she was doing for other people. So I signed up for her Akashic record certification in 2021 because I believed that that was my next best step at that time. And it was. I learned a lot about the records from her. There was a lot of great stuff in there. And also, too, this person had been in business for decades. Like, she was not a new business owner, not to say, I mean, I'm a newer business owner, so there's nothing wrong with that, but she had been in business for decades. So she had built this reputation for herself where people really respected her and looked up to her. She was on so many popular podcasts. Like, she again had this really great reputation. So of course I wanted to believe her. Of course I would. This is not some random ass person from the street. Like, this woman had a very successful 7-figure business from what she told us. She told us it was an 8-figure business. I don't know if I believe that, but she did tell us that her business was very successful, and she had the press credibility and the recommendations and the referrals and the people who had become successful, in her words, because of her, to back all of that up. So of course, like, yeah, I want to take your Akashic certification. Like, absolutely. You seem like an expert in the field. Duh. I'm also new to this. I've been in the spiritual coaching space for less than a year. So I haven't really fully vetted people in the spiritual space. I'm just kind of signing up for things because it feels like that's the right thing to do. And so I go down this path where I started taking most of her courses. I signed up for a business mentorship in 2022. I kept working with her one-on-one. I signed up to become an Akashic teacher because obviously I loved learning the records, and I was finding a lot of success in my business from using the records with people. And so I wanted to use the records to be able to help other people and to teach other business owners how to use the records for their own clients. And it was interesting because at the beginning of my journey with her, things seemed great. Like, she was on fire. She was coaching top tier people. She had top tier people in her communities. She made it seem like she was getting people this massive financial success. She made it seem like you could have that massive financial success. She really put certain people in her communities on pedestals to say, like, this is what you can do too. This person is making $50,000 a month. Like, isn't that amazing? Again, like, you are so convinced that can be you. So I had this whole delusion in my head that after I quit my corporate job, I was going to be making $30,000 a month. I was going to buy myself the luxury car. Like, I was going to buy the 6-figure home. I was going to do, all of these things. And she would also tell you that stuff behind closed doors. In my private mentorship sessions, I had just started my business, mind you. I was making at that time probably $3,000 to $5,000 a month, like enough money to pay my bills. And she was telling me, oh my God, you're ready for 30K months. Like, you're ready to make $30,000 a month. Like, it's going to happen for you. You're going to have like this massive success very soon, very soon. But she also made you believe that if you didn't get that result, that there was something wrong with you, that you weren't doing enough inner work, you weren't going into the records enough. And anytime that you would reach out to her to ask for guidance because you hadn't reach the goal that she told you were going to reach, she would get angry at you and she would tell you that you needed to go into the records yourself and ask them for guidance on why you weren't making $30,000 a month. So it led you always chasing your tail on this sort of like spiral path where there were never any answers. There was never any tangible guidance. There was always something that you needed to heal, something that you needed to work on. There was always something wrong with you and why this lofty goal hadn't happened yet. And by the way, like, as a spiritual teacher, I'm often sending my students on internal quests to find the answer to help you shift your energy to get you to a particular goal. But I'm also not making these ridiculous promises to my students that they're going to make these large sums of money in a short period of time. And I'm never promising any specific tangible outcomes, but I do help you move forward in your business. And that if we are shifting things at least 1 degree of difference, then that to me is a success. So anyway, long story short, I was really deep in working with her between the years of 2021 to 2023. In 2023, that is when I started to notice an energetic shift in Betty and in her containers and the way that she was operating business. It started to get progressively darker. The very beginning of 2023, Betty co-authored a book about the Akashic records with other people, and she was offering spots in this book, and she was really intent on me doing it. And she emailed me multiple times asking me if I wanted to participate. I kept going in asking my guides, do I need to participate in this? They kept saying, no, it's not for you, don't do it, it's not for you. And I was like, okay, all right. I thought it was because of money at the time, because Betty, of course, wanted a sizable financial investment in participating in the book. Of course she would. By the way, Betty's programs were not inexpensive. We were spending a lot of money, a lot more money than I will be honest with you that I charge for my containers. I was spending lots of money on Betty's programs. There was always something else to participate in where you were never really led to a tangible result. There was always something else to participate in that you did with her as a after something else wrapped up, right? So anyway, 2023, I started kind of being more internally focused. I was teaching the records, her methodology to students at that time. And I started pulling back a little bit, spending less time in her containers. I was very busy at that point with my own business, working with clients. I had a lot going on. So I was not working with her one-on-one at that time. And I started doing breathwork journeys on my own to help me receive guidance. And my guides kept bringing me back they kept telling me, it's time for you to teach the records on your own. It's time for you to move on from this. You've learned a lot from Betty, but it's time for you to move on. It's time for you to do your own thing. And you need to teach your own system of the records. And that's what it is. And they kept telling me to leave. And I was in denial. I was in total denial. I was in the closer inner circle of this person's groups. I will admit to that. I was in very deep with her, and very close to her, especially during the years of, again, 2022 to 2023. I was part of her teacher group. So I had a lot of access to her. I heard, I was close in there. And I had a lot of fear about leaving. I noticed that when other people would leave, she would tear them down. We were told to turn against people who left. We were told that people who left were copywriting and plagiarizing her work. Sorry, copywriting is not the right word. That we were told that people were plagiarizing her work and stealing her IP, and that we could not talk to them, that they had been blocked on all platforms. And I felt a little suspicious, but at the same time, I was like, oh my God, like who would do that? Who would copy her work? Like who would do such a thing? But at the same time, I felt this fear around leaving. I also had some weird things happen to me. A good example of this is there was one time where I had spent a lot of money on one of her business coaching containers, and there were only there was only one other person who signed up for it. And at the time, I thought she was running this big business, so I was shocked that this container that she had been advertising and marketing for relentlessly only had me and one other person in it. But I was also kind of excited because I was like, okay, great. Like it's just the three of us. I'm really going to learn a lot from her. She cut down the number of group calls to like one a month. And then she told me that I was going to get access to some virtual course portal. So I'm like all excited about access to this virtual course portal that, by the way, I believed I was going to be making $30,000, $50,000 a month in my business. And that if I had access to this course portal, it was going to give me these like tangible tips for success with figuring out what to do in my business. And I messaged her on the app that she used on a Friday afternoon, before business hours were over. And I said, hey, Betty, I would love access to this course that you told me I could have access to. I can't find my username and password. Can you send it to me, basically? And she turned on me real quick. Literally, I'm just asking for my username and password. Normal things to ask for, right? Just send a password reset email. She turned on me real quick. I get an angry voice message back that says, Emily, you just castrated me. You castrated me. How dare you? How dare you ask for information that you know that I will give to you, but you can't be patient and wait for it. You don't trust me. You don't trust me to give this to you. And that breaks down my trust in you. And I don't know. I don't know if I can have you in my business container, because I only allow in people who are in integrity into my business containers. Again, she's like very convincing. And here I am. It's a Friday night. Like I'm about to go out with friends. This just knocked me down about 10 notches. I feel I'm like ripped back into my Catholic school days. All of a sudden, I am in trouble. I am getting a detention. I'm like, fuck, like my teacher's mad at me. Like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? And it was traumatizing, right? And she uses this word castrating, which is, kind of an awful word. And I will admit that in my Akashic Record certification, I do use this word to describe a type of energetic behavioral system that we can have where we are basically cutting the universe and God off at the knees by not trusting in life and not trusting that God will provide for us and not trusting that the universe will help us and that we can receive from, divine support. But it's meant to help. It's meant to be a way to help you understand that you're not trusting in the universe. And maybe I should use a different word now that I'm sharing my story, but regardless, the way that she responded to such a simple question was completely unprofessional, so rude, so demeaning. Of course, it ruined my night. And the fact that I had spent so much money on this, and here she is making me feel bad about myself. Like, you don't want a mentor who's going to make you feel unsafe. Like, absolutely not. And yet, of course, I had so much fear that if I spoke up, that again, I would be kicked out. I would lose out on my money, that people would turn against me. So do you see how high control groups like this lead you? They create this sort of belief system of delusion that buys you into this lifestyle of grandeur, that you're promised all of these things that you can do if you just follow what they are telling you to do. And if you make one mistake, if you do something wrong, if you act out of line, your wrist gets slapped. And all of a sudden, you're in fear. All of a sudden, there's something wrong with you. You're disobedient. Oh my God, you're disobedient and you're wrong. And how dare you? And you may not be welcome here anymore. And so of course you're like, oh my God, I have to like be perfect and I have to make it up to her and I have to show up even better on the next coaching call and I have to do even better in my business, because you want her to like you and you want her to help you and you want to gain this person's trust at the end of the day. But at the same time, you're so terrified to leave, because if you do, people are going to hate you. They're going to talk about you behind your back. And you're so afraid that this person is going to tear down your business. I mean, I built my business in this community. I built my business in this space. And so I had so much fear that if I left, my business would be ripped out of my hands. Now I realized that I was giving so much of my power away to this dynamic, so much of my power away to this person outside of me. And I was leading from fear versus leading from my heart versus leading from love. And I'll never do that again. I will never, ever, ever do that again. But this is what happens when you get caught up in a spiritual dynamic with a guru or a teacher that you put on a pedestal, who is not operating in integrity, who is using weird, manipulative, psychological control tactics on you, that you don't have any other choice. You just go along to get along, especially if you're programmed like I was to respect your authority and say yes and just do it. So, of course, like I would stay in it as long as I did. And then things started to get dark. Things started to get even darker from there. She started to get angrier. I started witnessing her berating people in front of groups of people. I started witnessing her bringing up people's childhood trauma in front of large group settings. I started witnessing her being angry at people in group settings. I started witnessing her telling these more wild stories about things that were happening in her own life that there was no way that they could be true. There's this famous lore story that, if you know this story, then you'll know that you were in this person's community. If you don't know this story, then you don't even need to worry about you were not involved. There's a famous lore story that this person would tell about being attacked in the middle of the night by the Vatican, and how the Vatican and she was energetically, psychically attacked by representatives from the Vatican in her bathroom in the middle of the night. And here I am, I'm like, oh my God, the Catholic Church, like there's demonic energy. All of this, she leads you to believe that if you don't follow what she's telling you, then you're going to get psychically attacked by other people, that other groups and religious organizations are going to steer you wrong, that she is the one that knows the truth and has the full truth and only but the truth. And oh, if she's being psychically attacked by the Vatican in the middle of the night, oh my God, like that could happen to me. Like I have to stay in her space because I'm going to be safe with her, because she knows what to do if something bad happens to me when I am using my psychic and intuitive gifts. Ooh, I mean, that's a heavy burden to carry. That's a heavy burden to carry. So it's 2023. I'm getting these messages that I need to leave, that I need to be on my way. I need to start teaching the records. I have so much fear around teaching the records. I had dinner one night in the fall of 2023 in the midst of eclipse season with a really good friend of mine. You'll know who you are when you listen to this, because that conversation changed my life. I was having dinner with a female friend of mine, and I was saying to her, I know that I need to leave this community and I need to teach the records. And I'm so afraid. Like, I don't know if I can do it. I feel like it's going to be a lot of work. I feel like it's a heavy burden to carry. I feel like, who am I to do this? Who am I to teach the records, And she looked at me and she said, "Why not you? I know you. I know the records because of you. I don't know the records because of her. Why wouldn't you teach your own system? Like, what if that was the thing that you're supposed to do?" And I was like, "Oh my God, you're right. You're so right." Meanwhile, I had this impending yearly payment that I had to make to this spiritual teacher to be part of her communities. I had to pay her an annual fee. It was about $1,000. And I had this annual payment coming up and I didn't want to pay it, of course. So I had that looming. So I had all of this pressure of leaving. And thank God I had all of this pressure, because what happened next was finally the straw that broke the camel's back. Betty is advertising this retreat to all of us. I get incessant emails. "You have to come on the retreat. If you don't come on the retreat, you're missing out." Another tactic she would use. "If you don't do this, you're missing out. You're not going to get the results that you want, right? So you just got to spend more money, buy into more programs. Like, you're going to get what you want. Your business is going to take off, And so she's got this retreat coming up that's at a sacred site in the United States. I forget exactly where the retreat was, to be honest. So I'm not going to say the place because I don't want to get that detail wrong. But there's a retreat that she's got planned, and it's here in the United States. She goes away on this retreat with a few people from the community. And while they're away on the retreat, I start getting messages. Messages that they were having this wildly transformative time on the retreat. And I start getting these weird voice messages that I'll never forget from her and other people in the community. They were trance-channeled messages. Trance-channeling is something that I do that I'm very proud of. A true trance channel will always ask your permission before giving you the energy. Or at the very least, you know what you are getting yourself into when you watch a trance channel video. This was something that was sent to me without my permission. Trance channeling is when your body is taken over by an energy, a high vibrational one, ideally it's a high vibrational energy that is using your physical vessel to channel through you. And so you're receiving the energy from that being. So she was sending me these trans-channeled messages without my permission to a private inbox. And the energy that was received was so icky. Oh, I just I was like, there's something seriously wrong. There was someone else that was part of that was also sending the messages. And I was like, what is wrong with her? She sounds like she's hypnotized. She sounds like she's under the influence. Like, this is fucked up. Like, this is weird. I don't get it. We're all invited to get on a Zoom call with this person, and we're invited to meet a special guest. So I get on this Zoom call. This is a few days later. It's during the middle of the day. It's me and other people in the community. And the spiritual leader, Betty, is sitting on a bed in a hotel room. She is incredibly thin. Her eyes are massive. And she is having, in what I am viewing as some sort of spiritual break. I want to be careful the words that I use here because I don't want to diagnose the situation, but there was some sort of cognitive break or some sort of, it did not feel to me like this person was all there. I feel like something happened psychologically to this person that created an episode. And what I witnessed in that group call was the trance channeling of a being that was absolutely not of love and light. It was a being of a very dark nature. I'm not going to use specific words here, but I'm sure you can understand what I'm trying to say. It was very malevolent, what I witnessed. I was terrified. I knew going into that call that something was wrong. So I set up extreme protection around myself. I visualized these strong steel walls around me that she could not see into my energy, that I could not receive what she was giving out. She made people look her in the eyes on this call. She called people out for being in fear or nervous of her, that was wrong if they were in fear or nervous. There were other people on the call who were in tears claiming that this person, by the way, who claimed to now be Mother God, there was another name that I'm not going to use here in this podcast because it's a very specific name, but she's claiming to be Mother God. She is claiming that she can take away your fear and that she'll bless you with, of course, financial prosperity and abundance if you follow her and if you do what she says. And let her take away your fear because I can help you connect with God, right? Because I am Mother God, obviously. This is one of the most terrifying things I have ever witnessed to this day. I know there's scary shit out there in the world, but this was something, and this was something unbelievable to me. The energy in the group was just unbelievable to me. Like I am brave and courageous for sitting through that because it was something I never want to, and it was something I will never want to witness again, ever, truly. And after that call, I knew I had to be done. I hung up. I was like, that's it. I'm out. I'm fucking out. I'm done. Peace. So I said my goodbyes about a week later. Said my goodbyes a week later. I was like, I do not want anything to do with whatever this is. This is not God. This is not high vibrational. I have no idea what the fuck is going on here. She is not well. This is not something that I want to be part of. I am done. See you later. So I sent her a very kind message. I said, I am being called to teach the Akashic Records myself. Being fully honest with you, this is a big part of my journey and what I'm here to create. I have to teach the records on my own. I have so much gratitude for you for what you've taught me. I'm so grateful for you being my mentor for this number of years. And thank you. Thank you so much. It was very kind. And I left, never looked back. I don't know how long it was before I realized, it was not a long period of time, maybe a couple weeks, that I had been blocked on all platforms. That apparently there were things being said about me behind closed doors, other people that chose to leave around the same time for similar reasons were also being spoken about in a negative light. This person could not understand why people were leaving her community. And yeah, so I cut my losses and ran. I then went on a journey of launching my own Akashic Records certification, which is the program that you guys all know and love. It is taught by yours truly, Emily the Mystic. It is my baby. It is my thing. It is my energy. It is my way of looking at the records. It is my system. I, of course, like, because she taught me so much, there are that she has taught me so much that, of course, like, will you likely find aspects of influence in the way that I teach the records in there? Absolutely. That's just because of the way and the nature of the way that I teach. But again, it is fully my own certification. And the way that I knew that I needed to owe the students who had learned her system through me, that I needed to give them something because of the way that I knew that Betty was operating in business. I wanted my students who had learned the system through me from her, that I wanted to give them something. So I gave them access to my Akashic certification complimentary, totally on me. And that's really how the Emily the Mystic Akashic certification was born. And now I'm so grateful that I get to teach it. And teaching the records ended up being a much smoother process and an easier process than I ever imagined it would be. And of course, I totally fell in love with teaching it. And honestly, leaving that community was easier than I thought it was going to be. I was so afraid of like the negative repercussions. And honestly, it felt like a weight had been lifted off of my shoulders. I feel like I got a lot of my life force energy back from leaving that group. I feel like I was finally able to build a business on my terms. And I will say that since then, I have not worked privately with any one-on-one mentors in longer term containers because I have had to work on rebuilding my own trust in teachers. I have done I've taken classes, I've taken a couple of group opportunities with other people, nothing long term, only short term things to help me rebuild that trust again, because truly my trust was broken, and business coaches specifically. And I have had to learn a lot around operating in business on my own and following my own path and doing things my way, not based on how she taught me or cookie cutter methods or ways that other people would tell you to do things in business. I finally was able to find a path in business that would work for me. And I'm so grateful that I did. Now, obviously, you guys know that I do negative entity work. I do malevolent spirit release. I do the malevolent galactic clearing. So, to be fully transparent with you, like, yes, there's a very dark energetic layer to all of this that people who were directly involved with her may be susceptible to, in my personal opinion. That is my opinion. That is not anyone else's opinion. And it's also something that you don't need to be in fear about if you weren't working with her directly. Okay. So if you were not working with her directly, it's not something that you need to worry about. Anyone that did work with her directly, there is a karmic connection. There is a karmic tie there. There are past lives. You're probably going to have to do some digging around that if you haven't done that work yet, to discover your connection with her and what you're learning in this lifetime and what that means for you at a soul level. I do believe that that creates some level of energetic entanglement that you do if you worked with her directly. You will need to separate yourself from, which is work that I do facilitate for people, by the way. So if that is you, then I'm happy to help you in an Akashic Records reading. Just book an Akashic Records reading and DM me and let me know what it's for, and we'll facilitate that work together. So don't worry, I got you. I've got your back. I know what to do. I know how to handle things. And I'm being candid with that in this podcast episode because I don't know if everyone out there does this work for their clients who was involved with her, and I do. So I'm happy to help you with that if you're ready to listen. And by the way, I have set up so much protection around this episode. This episode is very veiled. It has been done in, utmost integrity and in energetic, alignment with full divine truth and integrity. I said many blessings before recording this. So there's nothing, listening to this that you need to worry about. Again, it's really only for people who are directly connected to her or impacted by her in some capacity, that there's probably some clearing of your field that you need to do in order to fully be able to move forward from it, just like you would exiting any relationship where there's karma involved, any relationship that ends on a bad note or on a dark note, or any relationship in general. If you feel like you need clearing from that, I mean, this is the same thing. So we can't really even look at it any differently than that. But I do know that when the veil drops for people around this whole thing, it fucking drops. I unfortunately lost touch with a dear friend of mine for about 2 years after I left the community. Anyone that hadn't fully become aware of what was going on in the community, energetically, I couldn't reach them. I just was not able to be in touch with them. It was a very weird thing for me. And as soon as people came to the awareness of what was going on and that they were not in a good place and space in this container, and I was finally able to get in touch with them. So I have been able to get back in touch with people who were veiled from this whole thing. There's just many layers of energetic weirdness around this whole thing that I can't make up. I also don't claim to have all of the answers around this. So there are so many dynamics and aspects to it. I could have a whole conversation about this all day long. But of course, this is a podcast episode and we only have so much time. So I'm going to keep it at that. I also know too that my experience is just a drop in the bucket compared to what other people have been through. I know that things got progressively worse after I left, especially in 2024. Some of the stories that I've heard are from something out of a crazy movie. And I can't speak on that because I wasn't part of the group at that time. Thank God. Thank God, knock on wood. Got out exactly at the right time. But I do know people that were involved and who were so deeply impacted and are still healing from it. So if that's you, like, my heart goes out to you. I'm also so grateful for a couple of women who have done a full podcast series of episodes on this topic, who have done interviews of people who have been impacted by this. Like, thank you for taking so much time to do this. If you're listening to this, you know who you are. I did not participate in your series because I needed to tell this story on my own and have it be my own thing on my own podcast. And it's been a journey of getting ready to do this and doing the energetic work that I needed to do in order to prepare me for this, because I've had some anxiety coming up around recording this and filming this and sharing what I've been through. And I also want to say too that whether you've been involved in this group or any other group where you felt like you've been duped or conned or taken advantage of, or you felt like things have happened that have been out of your control, I want to say to you, like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. You can't blame yourself. You can't make yourself wrong for it. You can't feel guilty for this. Like, truly, it's out of our hands in a lot of ways. All you can really do is do the healing that you need to do to bring compassion and love to yourself for participating in this. And don't make yourself wrong for it. And also, if there are people in your life who are giving you a hard time for participating in something like this, be really discerning with those relationships. I will be honest that there were people in my life that I have cut ties with who gave me a hard time for this experience and who lost trust in me for participating in this. And sorry, can you have a little compassion for someone who is for someone who was ultimately not fully energetically in control of something that was happening? Okay. I take responsibility and accountability for what I've been through and for what I have signed up for. And at the end of the day, I am now on a healing journey. And if you want to give me shit for it, then that's on you. I'm choosing to walk away, and I want nothing to do with your negativity, and I want nothing to do with you giving me a hard time about this. So that's on you. That needed to be said. And so I will say to you, my dear listener, if people in your life are giving you a hard time for participating in something that wasn't what you thought it was going to be, or being in a high control group, or whatever your experience was, do those people need to be in your life? Or can you find people who will understand and who will be able to hold the emotional space for you that you need with your healing journey from this? Because trust me, this impacts you so deeply psychologically that you need to rebuild trust in yourself, and you have to rebuild trust in other people and trust in teachers and therapists. I didn't really start seeing a therapist that could help me at the level that I thought Betty was helping me until recently, because I have not been able to fully trust people. This broke my trust so deeply. I get emotional saying that. This broke my trust so deeply in a lot of ways. And I'm finally sitting in front of you, able to say that I have at least gotten to a point where I feel like I can be open to full trusting relationships in my life in all capacities. But this was something that really did me dirty. And I'm grateful to be on the other side of it, truly. So again, if you've been impacted by this on a deep level, I am here for you. Send me a DM, send me an email. Let's chat. We'll get you signed up for an Akashic Records session. We'll do some of the necessary clearing work for you to help you with this. I'll help you understand some of the memories that you may have or some of the psychological impact that you've been through. I also would recommend that you seek out a trusted therapist or counselor to talk to, because all of this is out of the ordinary. You are not crazy. Your experiences are real. Trust yourself, trust your judgment. if anything, I hope that what you've been through helps you actually build deeper trust in yourself and others and teachers, and that you find your community, you find your people. If you're part of my community, I'm so fucking grateful that you're here. I love you guys so much. Thank you for listening to this from the bottom of my heart. I feel very humbled sitting in front of you telling this whole story, because it sounds crazy when I talk about it. And also, too, I, as your spiritual teacher, feel like I owe you an apology if I ever steered you wrong or gave you false information or bad information. Like, that was never my intent. That was never my intention. I feel like I was under the influence in a lot of ways when I was part of this group, and I'm fully out of it now. I'm fully on the other side, and I hope you see that. And thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you guys so much. That's it. That's the story. We're done. We're closing this chapter of my life for good. We are cutting the cords. It is done. It is done. This portal is closed. This portal is closed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for listening. I love you so much. And I'll chat with you soon. Portal is closed.